Madam Secretary, may we begin?
Indeed. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a City Planning Commission review session. Today is Tuesday, September 2nd, 2014, and a quorum is present. Before we begin, I think the chairman would like to say something.
Yes. I would like to very much welcome Larissa Ortiz as our newest member of the Planning Commission. She joins us with almost 2 decades of extensive work managing urban commercial revitalization and economic development areas and consulting in those areas. She's an alumna of EDC, so I'm particularly pleased to welcome her. And I note that Ms. Ortiz is the newest member of our growing MIT Alumni Caucus, which includes Ms. Zhang on the commission and our executive director, Purnima Kapoor. Larissa was also a Fulbright scholar, so once again, in a continuing trend, has increased the average IQ of the commission substantially. In 2008, Larissa founded her own company, Larissa Ortiz Associates, where she works with a number of national and international clients, including municipalities, not-for-profits, business improvement districts, and private enterprises. Prior to that, Larissa served as the founding director of the Commercial Markets Advisory Service, the in-house technical assistance program for the Local Initiative Support Corporation, another entity founded by the extraordinary Mike Svirodoff. Larissa also worked for EDC, as I mentioned, as a senior project manager, and in addition to her wealth of professional experience, Larissa teaches at the Pratt Institute and is the editor of the Commercial District Advisor blog. I am confident that Larissa's passion for economic development will be a tremendous asset to the Planning Commission's work as we foster ground-up community planning throughout the 5 boroughs. And I'm sure I can speak for all of us in offering you a warm welcome and look forward to working with you. So, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item on the agenda is a proposed Department of City Planning zoning map and zoning text amendment to extend the West Chelsea Special District, ensure predictable height and setback controls, and facilitate unenclosed sidewalk cafes. Our presenter is Carolina.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The Department of City Planning proposes a zoning map amendment and zoning text amendment to expand the Special West Chelsea District to include a partial block bounded by West 15th Street, West 14th Street, 9th and 10th Avenues in the West Chelsea neighborhood in Manhattan Community District 4. The text amendment additionally includes modification of street wall regulations for some corner lots, a clarification of rear yard provisions, a correction of maximum building heights permitted in sub-area C, and will allow unenclosed sidewalk cafes on wide streets. These text amendments are being proposed in the larger Special West Chelsea District. The Special West Chelsea District was mapped in 2005 from West 16th Street to West 30th Street between 10th and 11th Avenues, with 2 partial blocks at the southern end of the district, east of 10th Avenue. As the neighborhood transitioned from manufacturing, storage, and auto-related uses to a predominance of galleries, restaurants, and bars, the city recognized the need to guide the area's development as a dynamic mixed-use neighborhood with residential along appropriate avenues and blocks, a fortified gallery district in the M15 mid-blocks shown here, the integrated Highline open space, and building forms that relate to and enhance the area's character. In 2012, the special district was expanded to include the Chelsea Market Complex between West 15th, West 16th Street, 9th and 10th Avenues, immediately north of the project area. The zoning map and text amendments establish a sub-area to allow increased density and specific bulk controls for the expansion of the site. This proposal today stems from a continued effort in collaboration with Community Board 4 to identify opportunities to reinforce the special district. The project area is bounded by West 14th Street, West 15th Street, 9th Avenue, 10th Avenue, but excludes a portion of the block 325 feet east of 10th Avenue and south of the block center line. Blocks to the north, east, and west are representative of West Chelsea's dynamic character. Immediately north are several large, full-block, formerly industrial loft buildings that have been converted to office use. Blocks further north and east are predominantly residential with townhouses, newer and older apartment buildings, and the Robert Fulton houses to the north. Nearest the project area, 9th Avenue has a concentration of commercial uses, and 10th Avenue continues to transition away from parking uses and manufacturing to office and retail uses. With the adoption of the Special West Chelsea District in 2005, portions of the special district that were designated for residential and commercial growth continue to undergo active development. An example is the Caledonia building at 450 West 17th Street, which is a residential building. Outside of the special district, the conversion and expansion of existing buildings to include office space has been prevalent south of the project area, with many buildings being converted in the meatpacking district, 111 8th Avenue, the expansion again of Chelsea Market, which was previously approved, and the Highline building at 450 West 14th Street. The Highline Elevated Park extends from Gansevoort to West 30th Street, and of course, Hudson River Park runs west along Route 9A. The surrounding area includes a segment of the Special West Chelsea District, which is shown in the hatch. The district is mapped over approximately 17 blocks from West 15th to West 30th Streets. It comprises 10 sub-areas and portions outside of sub-areas, both of which are subject to bulk and use controls that supersede the underlying zoning controls. Within the study areas, sub-area J includes Chelsea Market. To the north, sub-area I, with building envelope regulations, resulted in the construction of the Caledonia. The M15 zoning district is mapped over the project area as well as a larger portion of the surrounding area. Other zoning districts in the surrounding area include C62A over 14th Street, R8B, a contextual district over residential blocks, and R8 over Robert Fulton houses. Significantly, the project area is situated between the Special West Chelsea District, in the orange color, which has been discussed, and the Gansevoort Market Historic District in the blue. One project area building is in the Historic District. The district of 19th and 20th century 3- to 6-story loft buildings was designated by the Landmarks Preservation Commission in 2003. With the Historic District to the south and the carefully crafted special district regulations to the north, the project area, largely along 15th Street, in an M15 district with no height maximum, is susceptible to development that is incompatible with adjacent blocks. This is the existing massing of the 7 properties that make up the project area, all of which have frontage along 15th Street, some of which are through block properties that extend to 14th Street. This is 9th Avenue, and of course 10th Avenue. With the High Line running over the westernmost portion of the project area. 400 West 15th Street spans over 2 tax lots. It's Site 1. It consists of 3 single-story warehouses used as a lumber and construction materials sales center, Prince Lumber. The site is built to under 1 FAR. 408 West 15th Street consists of a largely vacant 5-story loft building with new eating-drinking establishment on lower floors. The building is built to 4.85 FAR, almost the maximum 5 FAR, and rises to 69 feet without setback. 412 West 15th Street, shown here, Site 3, is a 10,000 square foot lot where an approximately 110,000 square foot hotel is being constructed. The property has been merged with adjacent lots, including lots that extend to the Gansevoort Market Historic District, to produce a development on this tax lot of approximately 10.5 FAR, 24 stories, and 264 feet in height. 422 West 15th Street is a 6-story loft building that until recently was used as a parking garage and auto repair. The built FAR is 5.81 and the building is 73 feet tall without setback. It is currently being enlarged for office use and is expected to rise to 135 feet. 436 West 15th Street is a single-story former bar built to 1 FAR. The remaining unbuilt floor area has been distributed to the site of the hotel at 412 West 15th Street. Highline Stages is a through-lot 3-story building with sound stages and photography studios. It is built to 3 FAR, rises to 70 feet without setback. This is the only site in the project area that is also in the historic district. And finally, Milk Studios, which is part of a larger zoning lot with a property beneath the High Line, the Site 7. Milk Studios is a 8-story building of 111 feet without setback with several media and creative industry firms. The lot beneath the High Line has recently been constructed with a single-story retail building. Together with Milk Studios, the floor area on the entire zoning lot is exhausted at 5 FAR. 400 West 15th Street is one of several sites that is significantly underbuilt, built below the 5 FAR. 436 West 15th Street is also underbuilt, but as previously explained, has moved its floor area to the site of the hotel. Highline Stages is also underbuilt at 3 FAR and is in the historic district. Certainly buildings in the project area can be demolished for redevelopment or for expansion. 450 West 15th Street Milk Studios is the only building that currently exceeds the maximum permitted base height of 85 feet and penetrates the sky exposure plane. The department proposes zoning map amendment and text amendments to Appendices A and B of Article 9, Chapter 8 to include the project area in the Special West Chelsea District, shown here, again to a depth of 325 feet beneath the block center line. It will not be part of a sub-area, and the zoning district designation will remain M15. There's no change being made to the underlying zoning designation. Under current regulations outside of the Special West Chelsea District, M15 allows 5 FAR for commercial and manufacturing uses or 6.5 for some community facility uses, with a base height maximum of 85 feet or 6 stories, and no maximum height. Height is governed by the sky exposure plane. Buildings are required to set back 20 feet on narrow streets, 15 feet on wide streets, and residential uses are not permitted. This massing demonstrates what's currently permitted. It shows a base height of 50 feet and an overall building height of 252 feet. It should also be noted that this massing shows 2 sets of building permits that have recently been issued, again for the hotel site. That is proposed to be built to 264 feet, as well as the expanded 6-story garage, which will rise to 135 feet. In the Special West Chelsea District, M15 does not change density controls. Commercial and manufacturing uses are permitted up to 5 FAR or 6.5 for some community facility uses. The bulk regulations differ in that the base heights are between 50 and 95 feet, and building heights are capped to 135 feet, which is what's demonstrated here. Setbacks are at 15 feet on narrow streets and 10 feet on wide streets. The inclusion of the project area in the Special West Chelsea District does not involve changes to existing permitted density or prohibit any currently permitted uses. However, museum and non-commercial gallery uses are allowed without a limitation on size. It should be noted that 422 West 15th Street, again the 6-story former garage, is already being enlarged to be consistent with the proposed bulk regulations. There are existing M15 zoning districts currently in the special district. This proposal expands the special district to include a segment of an existing M15 zoning district and adopts these existing regulations that already apply in the special district. Again, no sub-areas being sought. It should also be made clear that the expansion of the special district does not extend special floor area transfer provisions for properties beneath and adjacent to the High Line. The southernmost boundary of the High Line transfer corridor is currently West 19th Street, and that is not being extended any further. The proposed building heights within the project area of 135 feet are consistent with Chelsea Market regulations to the north, where the mid-block portion of Chelsea Market is limited to 130 feet, and the 9th Avenue portion is limited to 135 feet. The Gansevoort Market Historic District is characterized by, to the south, is characterized by 3 to 6-story buildings. The proposed zoning and text amendments will make this segment of West 15th Street a suitable transition from the meatpacking district to the south to Chelsea to the north. Zoning text amendments are also proposed to Section 98-423 to strengthen street wall requirements for some corner lots outside of sub-areas. Currently, beyond 50 feet of an intersection with a wide street, street walls can be lowered to 15 feet. Beyond the initial 100 feet, the text is unclear as to street wall regulations. The text amendment will require that beyond 50 feet of a wide street, street walls extend along the street line for at least 70% of the narrow street frontage up to the minimum base height required. This again is consistent with the regulations in the rest of the special district. Section 98-423 is also proposed to be corrected to consistently stipulate a maximum building height in sub-area C on 10th Avenue of 125 feet rather than 145 feet. There's currently a discrepancy in the text, and it'll make sure that it's consistent. Section 98-41 special rear yard regulations will be clarified to require that rear yard equivalents are provided at the block center line and cannot be located at the street line. The location of rear yard equivalents at the street line is currently precluded by the street wall regulations. However, this will make sure that that stipulation is clear. Finally, a text amendment is proposed to Section 1444 to allow unenclosed sidewalk cafes on wide streets in the Special West Chelsea District on 10th Avenue, 11th Avenue, West 23rd Street, segment of West 14th Street that would be included in the special district, as well as a segment of 9th Avenue. These sidewalk cafes would be permitted, but for the fact that the special district is not currently listed in Section 1444. Allowing the cafes will appropriately animate West Chelsea's avenues and major streets. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions? Mr. Knuckles.
So Carolina, is it fair to say that the 2 blocks now included were not included in '05 because they were thought not to be ready, or what was the rationale for not including them when?
It was something that had been considered. There was also, well, there had been discussion about including Chelsea Market originally, but it's something that hadn't been fully agreed upon, and of course to leapfrog Chelsea Market to include the segment of West 15th Street would have geographically been a challenge. So again, working with the community board, we were asked to revisit, seeing as Chelsea Market was included in the special district in 2012, we were asked to revisit the question of West 15th Street at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Levin.
Hi, Carolina. Thank
Hi.
you for getting this one this far. I know it's been in the works for quite a while, and it looks like you have other projects in the works that are probably going to conclude faster than this one. So, congratulations.
Everything is shorter than the EULA process.
I have just a few informational questions, and I know this will come back to us after review with the community board. I know that there was a preliminary planning study that I think maybe was your handiwork, or certainly worked on in collaboration with the community board, that also included some additional properties. The 2 buildings on 10th Avenue and some blocks up to the north.
Right.
Are those still being worked on, or are they just no longer going to be considered?
It's something that, these are blocks that the department continues to be aware of. Certainly the blocks between 15th and 17th Street, as the report explains, are fully built out blocks. Again, they're within an M15 district. M15 permits 5 FAR. These are large loft buildings that are built to, I believe, somewhere between 11 and 12 FAR. And it's not believed that there's really any need to include them in the special district at this point. Further to the north, again, there's a variety of building conditions between West 24th and West 30th Street. So these are blocks that we continue to look at.
Okay. And then I know another issue that was important at the time of this study was the sensitivity to hotel use, which is, of course, allowed in an M15. You're not making any change in the base zoning, so hotels would be allowed here, is that?
Hotels continue to be permitted as of right.
Okay.
And again, we did, in the study that was produced just over a year ago, we did look at the proliferation of office uses and the strength of the office market expansion for offices at this location, and feel strongly in this. And as we've seen, the proposals that have come through, certainly for the 6-story garage building, and the proposals that we've seen come forth for the Prince Lumber site include office rather than hotel uses.
Hotel. So it's not felt necessary to make that change. And then finally, this one is purely technical, but I take it 30th Street on the north end is not a wide street. It's extra wide for a crosstown street, but does it not qualify as a wide street?
It doesn't. I don't believe it makes a 75-foot requirement.
Okay, because that would be a great location to have some sidewalk activity, but I guess not.
Well, the sidewalks will, this unenclosed sidewalk cafes will continue to be looked at as this application makes its way through ULURP, so the community board may consider that.
Okay, good, thank you, and good luck.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Certified.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's move to item number 2, page 18, proposed special permit to facilitate the continued use of retail space in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District in an existing building located at 130 Prince Street. This is item number 2, a Manhattan pre-hearing application, page 18, and our presenter is Joel.
Good afternoon. So this application is coming back to the Commission as a pre-hearing item after review by Manhattan Community Board 2 and the Manhattan Borough President. The application seeks approval of a special permit to legalize and allow existing retail use below the level of the second story at 130 Prince Street, located in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District, again in the Manhattan Community District 2. The requested action would allow the Commission to modify the use regulations within the underlying M15A zoning district, which prohibits use group 6 retail and commercial establishments below the level of the second story in buildings with lot coverage greater than 3,600 square feet. The Landmarks Preservation Commission approved the project in January 2013. Let's see. Okay, great. So 130 Prince Street is located at the southwest corner of Prince and Worcester Streets. It's 1 block south of West Houston Street and 3 blocks west of Broadway. The site is improved with a 5-story plus penthouse commercial office building with ground floor retail use. The building, this is the Prince Street frontage here, and this is the Worcester Street frontage here. The building was originally built in 1925 as a garage and included light manufacturing uses. In 1989, the building underwent an alteration, which is this Worcester Street frontage here. And at that time, and that's the time when the ground floor retail uses were established. So the existing retail uses are typical of buildings within the surrounding area. For example, in the subject block of the 20 lots that, apart from the project site, 17 have ground floor retail uses. So on the ground floor of the project site, there are 5 existing retail spaces that total to 11,490 square feet. The cellar includes accessory storage and building support functions, of which 10,129 square feet are accessory to the ground floor retail uses. All 5 spaces are currently occupied, and tenants include Cole Haan, True Religion, Barber, Woolrich, and Samsung Galaxy Studio, and all of those retail spaces, with the exception of Samsung, are under long-term leases. So the applicant is seeking approval of a special permit pursuant to section 74-711 to modify section 4214D2A, which does not permit retail use below the floor level of the second story in buildings occupying more than 3,600 square feet in the M15A zoning district. Therefore, the requested action again will legalize a long-standing existing use group 6 retail uses on the ground floor and cellar of the project site. So the application was certified and referred out to the public on May 9th, 2014, or sorry, May 19th, 2014. At its full board meeting on July 24th, 2014, Manhattan Community Board 2 adopted a unanimous resolution with 37 in favor recommending denial of the application. And that was unless the applicant agrees to restrict use group 6 eating and drinking establishments on the ground floor and cellar. CB2's recommendation also asked that if the application was approved, that consideration be given to limiting retail establishments to only the ground floor and cellars. So on August 27th, the Manhattan Borough President issued a recommendation recommending approval of the application. And the rationale for this is twofold. First, the applicant has stated that eating and drinking establishments are restricted in their current leases for these ground floor retail tenants, and they intend to continue this practice in future leases. And the second is that the applicant has stated its intent to continue to rent to smaller retail establishments on the ground floor, as opposed to renting the space to larger tenants and allowing for multi-story retail. And so those items are discussed in a letter that the applicant provided, which is included in your briefing packages. And so with that, the public hearing is tomorrow. The applicant will be here to answer any questions you have. And I could also answer any questions you may have right now.
Questions? Mr. Cantor.
If the applicant on a later date chooses to sell the property with the requested change on use group, is it not possible that the next owner will be able to vacate the premise, assuming the leases are expiring, and indeed put in a restaurant?
Yes, that would be possible.
Thank you.
Ms. Levin.
Joel, I don't have a question about the application so much as a city planning process question. I note that it took more than 18 months between the time this was approved by Landmarks to get to certification. And my question is whether that is a reflection of some internal issues with city planning or delay by the applicant, or what's the story here? And if it's city planning, would it be helped by by Blueprint?
Yeah. So this actually went through several rounds with LPC. And so that was, I think the application went back. Originally there was going to be some signage involved, but that's not included here. So there's that. Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful, because anytime you see these long delays, you sort of wonder, does city planning have what it takes to get these things done efficiently? And if not, let's be advocates for getting the help we need.
Yeah, no, we did it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
A fair point. And we should give the commission an update on where we are with Blueprint and how close we are and how we're meeting our target dates on Blueprint and where we expect to go to.
That would be great. I think it was about 6 months ago, maybe, we got a rollout sort of briefing, and it all looked really promising, but as it rolls along, it would be good to be updated on what the actual practice is.
Yes, and in fact, it has demonstrated its promise. So
good. Good to know. Thank you.
Ms. Efron.
Quick question, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but in the package it said that Estee Lauder is a tenant on all the additional floors. I'm wondering how long that lease is and whether they have the right to use any of the upper floors for either retail or signage, since they are both in the retail and advertising related world.
So their lease, I believe it goes into 2020. It's a long-term lease. The applicant can tell you exactly the date tomorrow, and I know they do have an option to renew as well. So yeah, they do have, it's for a while. And in general, that second floor can be used for retail. But with, I think Estee Lauder is, from what we understand, is planning to remain. But again, the applicant can talk more to that tomorrow.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Dweck?
I was just going to follow up on the question and see if we can get some detail into the balance of the leases on the space so we can understand the concerns of the community board, how long the potential for a changeover, as Commissioner Cantor mentioned, to a eating and drinking facility will be stayed until the expiration of the current
Right.
leases. So we can get some, maybe you have the answer now?
Yeah, well, what I could say now is that I think the most recent lease expires in 2016, and then they're staggered after that. The most recent lease is the Woolrich, with the Woolrich store, and I think that is a 10-year lease, but it's included in this letter. But we can get you each store's, when the lease ends for each store.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. Let's now move to item number 3, page 62, proposed Bronx pre-hearing application with respect to the site selection and acquisition of property to facilitate the consolidation of Department of Parks and Recreation facilities at 850 East 138th Street in the Bronx. This is a Bronx pre-hearing project. Item number 3, page 62. And Manny is our presenter.
Tight space here. Let me just move this a little forward. Good afternoon, Commissioners. As Jackie mentioned, this item is coming back for pre-hearing review. It's the 5-borough shops facility from the Parks Department. The applicants here are DCAS and the Parks Department. They're requesting a site selection and acquisition of property in the Port Morris section of Bronx Community District Number 1 to establish a new 5-borough facility. When this was certified June 9, I stated that this facility, the 5 shops facility, has been in operation for over 50 years. They were located beneath the RFK Bridge and had to relocate to 13 sites throughout the city, the facility itself, because there was repair work to be done on the bridge as per the Tri-Borough Bridge and Tunnel Authority. After a few years, the Parks Department realized that this type of facility, which basically consists of Parks Department staff, work crews, tradespeople, and they also have the equipment, the supplies, and raw materials to maintain the parks citywide, that this really wasn't working because 13 scattered sites and materials at different sites, the operation wasn't flowing smoothly at all. So they found the site at 850 East 138th Street in the Port Morris section. The site is located right here. It's a L-shaped through lot, approximately 1.3 acres. It's an existing manufacturing building, 2 stories built in the 1980s, and has approximately 75,000 square feet of floor area. It also has an unenclosed parking lot, 11,800 square feet, and it can accommodate up to 55 vehicles. Looking at the site plan, the building is located here. You can see its proximity to the railroad here. Also, it has access to the Bruckner Boulevard, which for this type of facility will give you an opportunity to get to the other 5 boroughs. There is a lot of manufacturing, as you can see from the area map, all in purple. It's located within an M31 zone, which permits the use. They will have 141 employees at this site, and again, accessory parking, 55 vehicles. Now, the Parks Department is not encouraging their staff to drive to the location. So if they elect to drive their vehicles, they can just go to one of the 3 sites. One of the sites is Park Department property at Randall's Island, another one on 86th Street, Manhattan, and Bronx Park. So they can leave their vehicles there and they will be shuttled to the facility. This was certified again June 9th, and the community board's recommendation is conditional. I believe you have it in your package, and I just want to...
Let's just mention that they did approve.
Yes, they approved conditionally. Thank you, Jackie. By a vote of 26 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstaining. Now, their conditions was that the Parks Department, which will be here tomorrow at the public hearing, so they'll answer these questions for you, that Parks hire local residents from Community District Number 1. They also want Parks to monitor the truck traffic in the area. Also want the Parks Department to improve the local parks in their area. And they also are requesting an amphitheater at St. Mary's Park. And then the last one, I called the board on all 5, but the last one, it was explained to me, it's not what you actually see there. It's Community Board 1 would like the Parks Department to build more soccer fields in their parks, because that's the going thing now for the kids in the area, and also the adults who play soccer. The borough president's recommendation was a straightforward approval. At the last page of his approval, however, he does mention that he would like to see some type of signage that describes his facility as a parks facility, and also a flag to be flown. And Parks Department will be here tomorrow to answer any questions that the commission may have. If you have any questions regarding this part, you can ask me also.
Questions for Manny? Mr. Marin.
Manny, thank you for your presentation. I just have one simple question.
Okay.
At the end of your briefing sheet, it talks about the parking. It says, due to the limited amount of on-site parking within the site, personnel who like to drive personal vehicles to work would also be required to park off-site. Are they discouraging the use of off-street parking around this neighborhood? Why would you suggest to go to why would they suggest to go just to off-site parking?
The Parks Department is trying to make the situation as best as possible. There is ample parking in the area.
Absolutely.
And initially the community board had concerns. And what the Parks Department had done is to actually meet with them several times before this was certified, in order to make sure that they address all the issues that Community Board 1 had. And they're willing to make sure that the board is happy, that the borough president is happy, just to get this project going. As you know, they're in the facility now by a month-to-month lease until this ULURP is complete. So they really want this project to move.
In fact, Manny,
You're welcome.
If you could just move away a little bit from to the other side.
Okay.
I think you can see
Okay, yes.
Yeah, maybe
How much parking there is?
the ample parking available in the area. Ms. Levin.
Manny, you mentioned that they've been occupying the facility already since April, so through the summer season, which I understand from the reading is their busy season. It would be interesting to know tomorrow how that experience has gone and whether there have been any issues that have arisen in the course of the operation that would be useful to know about.
Okay, yes, I will talk to them about it.
Yeah, particularly on the issues that the community board has raised, traffic, how's the parking situation? Is it all working as planned, or are there particular additional things we need to focus on?
Okay, I'll ask them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Young.
So, is this facility comparable in size as the one that they had to vacate previously?
According to them, they're very happy with the size of the facility. It will accommodate as much staff as well as space as they previously required. They looked at other buildings, but they settled on this one. And again, they'll be here tomorrow, and they can answer that question much.
And so it's not really any bigger than it was in the previous location, and it's not...
Okay, I don't know for sure, but I can find out for you. I will give them a call.
And in terms of transit access, is it also I guess, what I'm wondering about is there any reason to believe that, if Parks knew, that X percentage of their employees tended to drive to the previous location, is there any reason to believe that, suddenly more of them would drive to this location?
Okay, yes, I can research that for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And please alert the Parks Department representative to be able to answer those questions tomorrow.
I will.
Thank you.
You're
Any
welcome.
other questions? Thank you, Manny.
You're welcome.
Let's now move to item number 4, page 81. Say Brooklyn pre-hearing application for proposed acquisition of property to facilitate the continued use of an existing senior citizen center at 10315 Farragut Road in Brooklyn, the Abe Stark Senior Citizen Center. Item number 4, page 81, Brooklyn pre-hearing. And our presenter is Richard.
Good afternoon, Chairman Weisbrod, Commissioners. This is a joint application by the Department of Aging and Department of Citywide Administrative Services, again back for pre-hearing for a public facility acquisition of the Abe Stark Senior Citizen Center located at 10315 Farragut Road, Brooklyn Community District 18, the Canarsie section of Brooklyn. The existing center has occupied the site since 1971, having its most recent acquisition approved by the City Planning Commission back in July 21st of 1993. The action would allow for a new lease renewal and the continued use of the property as a senior center. The project site is located in M11 zoning district, generally bounded by the railroad right-of-way, the L Transit Authority right-of-way to the north, East 104th Street to the east, Farragut Road to the south, and East 103rd Street to the west. The property is a two-story building, originally constructed as both a senior center and a daycare center. The senior center is located on the ground floor of the building, utilizing approximately 10,122 square feet of floor area. The Abe Stark Center provides services for senior citizens 60 years of age or older. The center is open daily from 8:30 to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Friday. Some of the services offered include meal service. The center serves approximately 200 meals daily. Social services and application assistance, social, recreational, and physical activities. With the exception of the front entrance and accessibility issues that I will get to in a minute, an inspection of the building indicates that it's in good condition, with regular repairs made and painting on a 3-year cycle. More extensive renovations occurred in 2001, including new double-glazed windows, new bathrooms and kitchen facilities, flooring, which all continue to be in good condition. So again, the action before you is public facility acquisition for the Abe Stark Senior Center. Proposed action will facilitate lease renewal and continued use of the property as a senior citizen center. Community Board 18 held a public hearing and unanimously approved the project without conditions by a vote of 28-0 with 1 abstaining. The Borough President also recommended approval application with conditions. The conditions being asking the Department of Aging to report to the City Council for their public hearing as to what steps are being made to the entrance of the building to make it more welcoming. And secondly, asking that DCAS investigate the feasibility of an alternative site, Our Lady of Miracles Church on 86th Street and Flatlands Avenue, or any other such facility as a potential new home for the center. So to address the first concern, while there is purported to be an ADA compliant ramp at the rear of the building, it's really less than adequate to service a senior center. At the front entrance of the building, though not seen too well in this photograph, there are some 10 steps down into the facility, which is, again, not ideal, particularly for a senior center. So in consultation with the chairman and the department staff, we feel strongly that as part of any lease negotiation, particularly a long-term lease, that this matter should be addressed, the feasibility of providing a ramp or a lift or some other adequate access to the front of the building, in addition to making the building more welcoming. Currently is particularly dark and vacant space. As to the second recommendation, recommending that this Our Lady of Miracles be looked at, this came up during the hearing, I believe by the council member, particularly, I guess, because of the access issues and lack of parking was mentioned. Potentially, this is an alternative site. Tomorrow, the Department for the Aging will be here to discuss that, answer questions about it. But remember, this original acquisition had a condition that there can only be a lease for 20 years. Before they can renegotiate a new lease, they have to come here for commission approval of the acquisition. Right now, they're operating without a lease since December, and it's the position of the Department of the Aging that they want to pursue this application to give them the right to seek a lease renewal. This other site is some mile and a half away. There have been no substantive discussions about this site, other than mentioning as a potential alternative. And tomorrow, the Department of the Aging can speak further about this site and the pursuit of their application. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Richard? Mr. Cantor.
Hi, Rich. How are they excuse me, how are they currently accommodating the handicap?
Well, at the rear of the building, there is a ramp. The property slopes, so at the back of the building, it's almost at grade, but there is a ramp that provides access at the rear.
And they intend to continue that?
Yes, they claim that it's ADA accessible. We're not 100% sure of that. Certainly, they could provide better access than what's provided now.
But I guess I'm going out, assuming that they can provide better information regarding that ramp, that it is indeed ADA acceptable. You're interested in improving conditions, but is that going to be a deal killer?
Well, again, we're not party to the lease negotiations, but in discussions with the chairman and amongst the department staff, we believe that particularly if a long-term lease is negotiated, that this is something that should be considered, particularly for this kind of use.
Ms. Levin.
So for that conversation tomorrow, it would be really helpful if someone could bring us a picture of the rear of the building showing the existing conditions.
Yes, I was going to suggest the same thing. It would be, we do have pictures of both the rear of the building and a better picture of the front of the building, and I would ask Richard that you
I can put them on a board.
present those.
I have them here.
Maybe you could,
by 11.
perhaps you could pass those around here and put them on a board for Wednesday.
Is it physically capable of putting a legal ramp in the front of the building?
Well, as I think you'll see this is, how long a lease renewal are they seeking, do you know?
20 years.
For 20 years, you could amortize a better entrance to this building. Ms.
Sort of
Ms. Efron.
a similar question. It's unclear from the photos if there are more windows to the street than the 4 that are present there, and if, in fact, it's 10 steps below grade. I'm sorry, you were doing something I shouldn't have started.
I'm sorry.
I'll start again. I apologize. Are there more than 5 windows that are represented there in that photo? Because if it's 10 steps below grade at the front entrance, the windows that appear there look as if they actually are for the daycare center and not the senior center. And it's just sort of hard to tell from the photos, but it,
Well, the windows that are shown here are the daycare center.
okay.
But it's likely, at the front of the building, it looks as if it's a basement level, but again, the grade changes, so the rear there do have windows towards the rear of the building. You can't really see it here. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I'm just trying to understand if it's a space that has natural daylight for seniors who seem, in many cases, might be spending from 8:30 to 4 there on a regular basis.
They do, like, for example, here's a photograph which shows an exercise room. You can see the windows in the rear.
Right.
Yes, of course.
And that photo at the bottom, Richard, is of the senior center facility.
That's it also. You can see the window.
So most of the rooms have windows? Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Besser?
Thank you. Is the applicant, will the applicant consider making the necessary changes to the front of the building to appear more welcoming to the seniors?
The applicant is the Department for the Aging.
Right.
And also DCAS, joint applicants,
Correct.
but the building is privately owned. So they're leasing the building. It would have to be likely some sort of a negotiation, or either DCAS or Department of Aging would have to take this on.
Are they looking into that?
Yes, they would.
Okay.
They certainly would also.
And if it is feasible to change the front of the building to reflect a handicap ramp, they're open to that as well?
Well, ultimately, it will be in consultation with the owner.
Understood.
As Commissioner Cantor mentioned, a ramp may not be feasible due
If
to the
it is
geometry
not.
there, then a lift would be an alternative. It would be subject to,
Will the owner be here, Richard, Wednesday?
the owner is not party to this application. The applicant are the city agencies.
Well, could you make sure that whoever is here from DCAS and/or from the Department of the Aging be prepared to answer these questions on Wednesday? Because we can, I mean, our authorization is necessary for them to be able to enter into a lease, and we can condition our authorization as we so choose. Is that a question, Ms. Reade?
No, I actually was going to reemphasize what the chair has said, because, you know, if the lease is with DCAS, Department for the Aging, and the owner, and DCAS and Department for the Aging are making the application, then our request should be to DCAS and Department for the Aging. How they negotiate it with the owners up to them. Because either the owner puts it in, or the tenant puts it in and has some kind of credit on their lease, or whatever the case may be. I guess the point here is that this is a building for seniors, and a ramp should be considered, or a lift, or some kind of access way to make it more comfortable for the seniors.
Ms. Young?
So the material here notes, I'm sorry. The material here notes that most of the clients who are served by this facility are arriving by public transportation, and presumably Department of the Aging would know whether this other senior facilities in this vicinity are, you know, this are not underutilized as this one is. Would it be possible for them to address like how utilization of this facility compares to other like facilities in the immediate area?
You'd have to pose that question. You could pose it tomorrow to the Department for the Aging.
Okay,
I'm
great.
sure they have a better handle on occupancy of their center and other centers. But I would say also that likely, even though they do arrive by public transportation, likely a lot of people arrive by foot. Their Brooklyn houses, a very large public housing complex, is within very close vicinity to the center. And while there is public transportation, I understand also the center does provide a van to also transport seniors. Likely most of the traffic is local and within the vicinity by foot.
Ms. Levin?
Not wanting to take, well, I am taking a second bite at the apple. The borough president also raised questions about the vacant city-owned lot next door, which is not technically within the scope of this application, but do we know what the city's plans are for that lot?
Yes, we have taken a look at that, and there's been a hold put on the property since 2009 for HPD. Currently, HP does not have a specific plan for the project, for the
That
site.
sounds like the right agency to be looking at that.
It is in an M11 zoning district. It would require rezoning, and we've begun some preliminary discussions with HPD about that.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Besser?
Thank you. On these photos here, I can't see any lighting. I just was wondering if there were any lighting where the ramps currently are, where the ramp currently is. So,
You know, I'd
as far
have
as
to
safety
honestly
and-
say, I don't recall, I was there during the daytime. We'd have to ask the applicant tomorrow.
And security cameras, it's kind of a dingy, dark-looking area.
Again, the center does only operate during daytime hours, serving breakfast and lunch. Point taken, the facility is not open in evening hours, but we can certainly ask them tomorrow to be more specific about security and lighting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. You have a lot of questions to ask the applicant between now and less than 24 hours from now.
Thanks, Richard. Let's now move on to future votes. Staff have prepared favorable resolutions for the following. For tomorrow, Wednesday, September 3rd, we have the Empire Boulevard grades change proposal, which is a proposed city map amendment concerning the Franklin Avenue shuttle. We have the Shirley Chisholm Child Care Center an acquisition of property for the continued use of the facility as a child care daycare center. We have one Metro Tech Center office space, which involves acquisition of office space for the Human Resources Administration in Brooklyn. We have 420 Lexington and 570 Lexington Avenue, which are also acquisitions of office space for court administration offices. And we have 7015 and 7019 Highland Boulevard, which involve certification to subdivide one zoning lot into two to facilitate residential development. On September 17th, we have the Gateway Cathedral proposal, which involves special permits and other land use actions to facilitate the enlargement of an existing community facility and parking lot in the Pleasant Plains neighborhood of Staten Island. We had a hearing a couple of weeks ago. My understanding was that it went very well. We have staff here in case you have any questions, but if not, we will prepare a favorable report. Great. And then we have the Ridgewood Lodge landmark, which LPC has designated. Staff's not aware of any conflicts between the subject landmark and the zoning resolution, projected public improvements, or plans in the vicinity of the landmark, so we'll also be preparing a favorable report on that project. For September the 29th, we have the Astoria Code proposal, which, as you know, is a series of land use actions to facilitate a mixed-use development along the East River waterfront in Queens. We had a post-hearing follow-up a couple of weeks ago. We're going to have our second today. You received some materials, and John, I guess, will walk us through the materials that you received, a letter from the council members, as well as a response from the applicant, and some other updates which we need to inform you about.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I guess I'm flying solo here. I think Hae Kyung and I pleased with all the interest in the project, and actually I'm going to hand out a memo that we just prepared. It's hot off the press. Apologize for the quality of the Xerox. But we prepared it just to guide us through all the issues that have been discussed and how, again, the updates that we're here to present are. So, as Jackie mentioned, we had the August 18th post-hearing discussion, and subsequently we've received correspondence from the local council member, Constantinides, as well as an additional response from the applicant. And one of the key issues that have been highlighted throughout all of this has been the ability for the project to provide a school that will take care of the projected demand generated by this project, plus growth in the area overall. And we're certainly working with the applicant and the school construction authority to ensure that there's enough flexibility in the planning for that school, that although the analysis shows that the school need generated by the project is towards the end of the project, the availability of this site is going to be made to the applicant at an earlier opportunity, so the school construction authority can assess whether or not it would be able to build a school to serve the more needs in the sub-district, other than just the project-generated needs. The other thing that's very important is, obviously, there was some concern about the environmental conditions on the site of the school, and we're very pleased to report today that the applicant has agreed to begin to undertake a Phase 2 subsurface investigation of that particular part of their development site.
John, let me just note, at least on some of our copies, perhaps on all of them, page 2 is missing.
Right.
So,
I'm sorry to say that, yes, that this should have been a double-sided
so
copy. So we
will get you all a
yes.
full copy of this memo.
Yeah.
Page 4?
Is there a page 4 too?
Exactly, it's 3 pages. No, there's a page 1, 2, and 3. And Jackie, you got it? Okay. But the Phase 2 element is discussed at the bottom of the first page.
Are you hiding something, John?
We're trying to be as transparent as possible, but subconsciously, I won't.
Page 2 is just unimportant, I know.
That's right.
We don't have to know about it, right?
I bet it's waterfront.
So, actually, page 2 starts off with a discussion of ferry service, because we know that, again, that's also been a priority and a concern here. And to the extent that we can, we've been leading discussions with City Hall and EDC because there has already been a study, scope of work prepared to look at the feasibility of ferry landings on the Hallett's Point Peninsula. The scope of work is to do a detailed site assessment of 2, possibly 3 locations on the peninsula to understand exactly the technical and engineering challenges of constructing a ferry stop location at those locations, and then assessing the pros and cons and coming up with a recommendation of preferred location. And it is our hope, and certainly because of all the local concerns about the ferry, that we will be able to implement an RFP to hire a consultant to do this study before the conclusion of this public review of this project. The next topic is levels of affordability. Everyone now following on page 2?
No. No, we've all got, not yet.
Still to come?
Still to come.
Yeah. Well, if...
If the ferry is the transportation section here, is this the right time to ask a transportation question?
Go ahead.
Or do you want to get all the way through this?
Well, I think some of us don't have page 2
Oh, you don't all have it.
the
Oh, so let me
memo.
ask, so maybe I could ask a question that's not even here.
You can even ask a question that is there if you'd like.
John, I was really struck reading the council member's letter that, we're confronted with one application, but of course we had Hallett's Point before, and you've got Astoria houses. There's a big concentration of people there. And the notion of asking individual developers to supplement transit by running shuttle buses is really sort of offloading public transportation to the private sector. And I think given the aspirations for this location, we really need to ask ourselves a bigger infrastructure question. I think it's great you're looking at the ferries. I think that would be a tremendous addition, but ferries are only going to supplement bus and subway. And I wish we could find a way as part of these processes to really focus on the infrastructure and figure out what the city needs to be doing to provide the right kind of transit to allow this new neighborhood to thrive.
Well,
No, go ahead, John.
Well, there already had been extensive conversations with MTA Bus about the levels of service out to the point, starting with the Hallett's Point proposal and now with this. And in fact, we just had another meeting, not about this project, but about the Western Queens transportation planning. And there is a study that we're working on, our office and the Transportation Division of City Planning, which is going to point to the larger picture here of looking at how the whole waterfront from Newtown Creek up to Hallett's Point has to be seen as a development growth area for the city, and transportation planning needs to happen to support that.
Right, because the shuttle bus can only be a short-term solution, and it's a private solution, so it doesn't serve the public, which is what we as overall planners need to be keeping a focus on. So I'm glad for that information. Thank you.
Yes, I think we recognize that there's a need in this area for a combination of ferry service and enhanced public bus service. It's unlikely, clearly, that we will get mass transit train service any closer to this area, but enhanced bus service and ferry service, certainly together, would be a major plus for this area, and something that we've been focused on, as John indicated, on the ferry side, but also talking to the MTA and the Department of Transportation on the bus side. This is only on transportation now. Okay.
All right.
Why don't we do this? John, why don't you go through all the points in your memo, and then we'll come back and we'll...
I'll be happy if everyone now has a complete...
I believe we may all have the same pages.
All right. Excellent. Levels of affordability. So as you all are aware, on July 8th, the applicant did submit a modified zoning text amendment which would ensure that any residential development at Astoria Cove would be contingent on the provision of providing required or mandatory affordable housing at a minimum ratio of 20% for low-income units. And for those low-income units, eligible households have to have a maximum annual income of 80% of the area median income, which for a household of four is approximately $67,100. And the zoning text also allows the applicant the option of providing a share of affordable units for moderate and middle-income households if an increased share of floor area is made affordable. That then really provides what we think is a really robust strategy of a range of income bands that this project could serve to meet. The zoning text, however, omitted a requirement that exists in other applications of these income tiers that would require that there always be a minimum 10% share of housing affordable to low-income households. Again, those households with a maximum 80% of area median income. And we really believe that this is an oversight that needs to be corrected and can be corrected by the action of the City Planning Commission on the text. We can provide you with language that we think would address this and would then make it consistent with the inclusionary housing provisions that were applied similarly in other parts of the city. And just on the question of other notions of broader bands of affordability or deeper subsidies, there also has been a meeting with the applicant's team and HPD. They're reviewing the project, and we will get a better sense of whether or not also the project can provide any deeper levels of affordability by the time we meet next.
Question, sorry, on levels of affordability, if I may.
I'm sorry?
If I may, on levels of affordability.
Why don't we go through the
Let's go
entire
through
memo
the-
and then come back?
Because the rest are all fairly quick, and they're in the applicant's response letter to the commission. It has to do with site ownership. Again, the site has been assembled over 20 years. The first site was acquired in 1988, and that's the larger of the project parcels, but then the rest of it was assembled in 2007, 2008. And as of earlier in August, the project owns the whole site. Then there was a concern about non-applicant owned property, but property owned by one of the investors or partners in this development. And in this case, it's property located in the Rockaways at Beach 105th and Shorefront Parkways. And the information that was provided in the applicant's response, if you read it, basically explained that those properties were acquired in very dilapidated conditions. The owners had gone bankrupt, and HUD had actually filed a foreclosure notice on the property. So they've had to undergo significant building-wide renovations, and we believe that the management of those properties is an ongoing struggle, obviously, as we heard from the residents there, to improve the area of conditions of those buildings overall. The applicant did say in their response that they have made no decisions about the management of this site. You know, it's really planned, as far as we know, as a fully rental project, and obviously that would mean that there could be project management decisions as those first phases of the project are completed. We were talking about shuttle services earlier, and again, there is a plan in this project for shuttle services to connect with the N and Q lines at 31st Street, approximately 9/10 of a mile away, and the stop would be at the 30th Avenue stop. And they are estimating that there would be 3 40-seat shuttle buses that would make up to 4 runs per hour during the peak morning and evening rush hours. But they have not advanced their thinking as to how the shuttle services would operate between the various buildings in the project. On business relocation, the applicant has said that all of the businesses there are on month-to-month leases. They're fully aware that the project has the site has a project planned for it, but that the project would really, because it's staged, would not really be affecting those businesses in the large part until 6 or 7 or so years out, as that really gets underway for the latter phases 3 and 4. That to the extent that businesses are interested in staying, they believe they can ensure that tenancy during that period, and they've also said that they would be continuing to look at their inventory of properties within New York City to see the arrangements that could be readily done for their tenants here to find space on their own properties. But we definitely want to know sort of more of the locations of those properties and really how readily available they would be. And then the last issue is that we have had a request into NYCHA to simply provide us with some updates about their capital plans for the Astoria Houses complex, and particularly focus on what we've heard testimony on, the renovations to the community center.
Okay. Starting with Mr. Cantor.
Thank you. John's question, please, with regard to the level of affordability stuff, is your observation and suggested change reflected in the last paragraph on page 1 of the Councilman Costantinidi's question? Is that addressing this?
It does. I mean, we definitely spoke with the council member about ensuring that there would be a component here, because the press article, if you may have seen that too, that Brendan Crane's following the release of his letter, seemed to be indicating that the developer could swap out and do as affordable only moderate and middle income units. And he definitely believes that there should be housing here that addresses the needs of Astoria families, and he thinks that at the 80% AMI, we would be able to do that. There certainly may be ongoing discussions with him and the developer as this gets to the council.
I'm not sure I understand it that way. That means that one bedroom is renting at $2,600 will be considered affordable in a council district where the median income for a household is far below 175% of AMI.
Correct.
Am I missing your reply as being consistent with that?
Well, in addition to what we've done here, again, if the council member still continues to have this position, one of the options available to him would be to entirely eliminate this 175% AMI tier. What we've heard him say is he wants to make sure that we don't allow, as the text currently does, no affordable housing at the low income to be provided, which would be possible the way the current draft reads.
Well, just to clarify, as you know, with the existing incentivized inclusionary housing, the developer would have an option of doing 20% all below 80% of the AMI, or 25% at 10% below 80% of the AMI and 15% below 125% of the AMI, or with the correction of our text here, 30% with 10% below 80% of the AMI, 10% below 125% of the AMI, and 10% below 175% of the AMI, but a total of 30% that would in fact be regulated by affordability requirements. That said, as John indicated, that would permit the council to, if it wished, to eliminate that top tier.
While you were reciting, I was thinking of Abbott and Costello.
I'm sorry?
While you were reciting those numbers, I was thinking of Abbott and Costello.
You're thinking of Abbott because I don't know what to say about that. I don't even know how to respond. Any other questions to Mr. Cantor?
No, thank you.
Who else has a question? Mr. Knuckles.
John, I wanted to go back to the school timing and, well, the school timing portion of paragraph 1. Namely, it enables, there's a letter of intent under construction that will enable SCA to exercise its option for the site that has been at least preliminarily designated for a school. And it talks about there being no current need for a school because of the utilization rate now at supposedly 80%. But the last sentence, by 2023, and the project's fourth and final phase is expected to be complete, I guess that means in the bill year, the overall utilization rate is forecast at 125% without the project. And it is this 2023 forecast that is the basis for the project providing its own pre-K facility. My question is, what if it's 110% in 2023? What is the baseline for, if we know, for SCA to exercise its discretion in favor of a school being built here? Does it have to be 125%? What if it's 101% or only 100%? I mean, what does it take for SCA to make that determination?
What we've understood is the SCA does an annual reassessment of their capital plans and looks to ensure that they can address the areas across the city where the needs present themselves at the highest levels of overutilization. To the extent that this project can basically take care of its own needs, there's been analysis that shows that we're forecasting at the completion of the fourth and final phase, this project generates a need of 426 primary school seats. And to the extent that that would overwhelm and add a demand onto the current surrounding schools at this very high level of utilization, that no longer happens because it's basically going to all be placed in this school, those project-generated seats. And to the extent that that probably would exist at 110% overall utilization in the sub-district, we believe that the SCA will want to ensure that they can continue to not overburden the schools in the surrounding area. And to the extent that there's now going to be an opportunity for them to, each and every year when they do their capital plans, to update their strategy for this school district. This particular area is a very broad school district. The sub-district runs, again, pretty much along a lot of the Queens waterfront sites. This is going to be an opportunity for them to have this site available as they assess the needs in that whole sub-district.
So does SCA consider a burden to be anything in excess of 100%?
I don't believe it's a clear litmus test like that. Again, I think they're trying to look at what their resources are and what the needs are in the city.
I would say that the biggest burden on SCA, certainly recently, is the availability of sites. And so the fact that we are, would be in this project reserving a site for school would be probably of paramount importance to the SCA. That might even be more important than whether the district is at a 102% utilization rate or 112% utilization rate. And as we know, this site could not be transformed into anything else without coming back to us. Other questions?
No, over here, yeah.
Okay, first Ms. Efron, then Ms. Ortiz.
Thank you. This is a very useful memo. And I just want to clarify, because it now is the most current version we have. The shuttle bus operations would be free. I'm assuming that's correct. I only say that because the applicant sent a letter to the commission specifically saying that the amenity, that regardless of affordable I'm not quoting directly, but I will quote one word, but regardless of whether residents were in the affordable units or not, they would have, and this is a quote, access to amenities. And I just want to be clear, and it may be appropriate that there are different levels of fees associated with amenities. I don't know what the full amenities are, but I just want to make sure that, in fact, the shuttle bus is free.
We'll confirm that, but obviously that would benefit all the residents if it were.
Ms. Ortiz.
Just to follow up on Ken's question with respect to utilization rates, is it true that students from other schools in Western Queens that are overly burdened could potentially access seats at this location?
Again, there are geographies that each of the schools operate within. The nearest school to this is PS 171, which is a little further to the east of 14th Street. And to the extent that this might be within the geography of area needs broader than, again, Hallett's Point, there might be. But to the extent that it is a need, because it's a very large school district, much further away, this would not be a resource for that area further away.
Unless there were a gifted and talented program associated with it.
Of course, but right now I think the only requirement is that this is to serve a general population of students.
Ms. Jung.
I just turned it on and turned it off. Okay. So I'm sorry to go back to the issue of the affordable housing, but I'm just wondering, so, you know, we've discussed trying to have some conversations about deeper levels of affordability, and I'm wondering, so, you know, if the city does end up using subsidies for this 20% to get that affordability level deeper, would there be further requirements on the owner to provide additional units at some higher level? And the reason why I'm asking is I'm just wondering, so let's say we decide to do 60 AMI units in the site. I'm just wondering, how do we make sure that those 60 AMI units are, you know, are using somehow less subsidy than we would if this were, you know, if this didn't have an affordability commitment in it to begin with, right? Because at some point it seems like if you're making 60 AMI units with the regular sources of subsidy and you end up spending, you know, the same level of subsidy as you would to get your 60 AMI units, that 20% affordability commitment is nice, but we haven't made our resource allocation any different.
That's right, and I think going forward and moving in the direction that was spelled out in the mayor's housing plan, the idea would be that should the applicant actually seek to use subsidies, in this case for providing deeper levels of affordability, there would be an understanding that an additional level of affordability or ratio would have to be provided as well.
So do we know do we have some sort of a table for that, or?
We don't have a table, but we have someone who is more familiar with those discussions than I available.
Commissioners, wanted to just be able to give a response here, and I think the answer is that there's not a formula that's laid out right now. We're still in the process right now of conducting a study to support the new mandatory inclusionary housing program, and the expectation is that we will be able to lay out a more structured framework for how that's going to work in the future. The way that this approval is currently contemplated is that there would be an opportunity for the chairman to consult with HPD at the time that they seek to construct those units, to identify, essentially to make that assessment that you're describing, which is the amount of subsidy that's going in to get to that deeper level of affordability merely sufficient to get to that deep level of affordability, or should there be additional number of affordable units, or, you know, or how much deeper affordability should we be able to get for that subsidy? So the idea is not that there's a formula in place, but the objective is exactly, I think, as you have described it.
So what we will be setting then is sort of a baseline that says, worst comes to worst, those negotiations don't happen. At worst, you're going to get these 20% units at 80 AMI.
That's right.
I'm sorry, the 10 at 80 really, and then
And
whatever
then
mix
another
happens
share
on
it.
top of that.
Something would occur under the formula that's laid out in the zoning, and that any subsidy that's added to that would be evaluated to see if additional affordability would make sense, or if those units should be able to count with subsidy towards the requirement. In other words, the expectation is that subsidy would not be used in order to achieve the requirement.
There's no public subsidy involved with this minimum requirement right now.
That's right.
Thank you.
Ms. Levin.
So I'm glad that Bummy raised this question because it does touch on an aspect of the zoning text that I found kind of a head scratcher. And the city planning staff is always really careful about drafting text, but and I don't have the text in front of me right now. It struck me that the language that you're proposing to put into the zoning resolution would not make any sense to anybody who didn't participate in this rezoning discussion. It has very vague language about allowing discussions between DCP and HPD, and it gives relatively little guidance to the uninformed reader about what extra affordability you're going to have to provide. I think the briefing sheet was pretty clear. It said that if you get a subsidy, it's not going to count to your bonus. But that's not what the text says. So, but I hope everyone is satisfied that the text is clear enough to allow this to be well used going forward.
And the other thing that will, I think, critiques of the clarity of the zoning text are always an important thing for us to receive. No, and I think that in this instance they reference provisions that will be incorporated in the restrictive declaration, which, if not any clearer to the lay reader, will at least be more specific in terms of the actual process by which this occurs. And I think the commission report will also be clear on this subject, on what the expectations are for what this process is going to achieve. This text is specific, has no applicability beyond the present application, and is before a text like this gets applied to any other geography or application, we will have an opportunity to build upon the knowledge that we are compiling right now to come up with something that is going to provide greater clarity. Good. Because I think your point is well taken.
And just to underscore, as I know you know, there is no bonus here. So
correct. I'm in the old regime. Right. Hard to teach old dogs new tricks, but I get it. You don't get the additional. It doesn't count toward the affordability requirement of the site.
That is correct. Whatever
Thank you.
they do,
Thank
they're
you for
required to
correcting
do,
me.
period.
I'm with the program.
Any other questions? And any other questions? Ms. Messer.
Thank you. Commissioner Efron, I too recall reading that there were planning on having free shuttle service. So I wanted to verify that as well. And I wanted to know if it would be offered to only the residents in the development, and also how long they plan to offer the free shuttle service. Will it be for a year, 2 years, 10 years, forever? So I'm just curious about that. Thank you.
The shuttle service will be just for the residents of the development, but we believe it'll be an ongoing service because it just helps the property continue to, what they think, address a need for the residents and to be able to market those units. There's a current development next door. You may have seen it if you've been out to the site. The Shore Towers development, developed over 20 years ago, continues to run its shuttles.
Thank you.
Any other questions? This will return in 2 weeks for further discussion, as I'm sure there will be. And as each day goes by, more and more gets clarified, and I'm sure more and more will be clarified in 2 weeks. So thank you very much, John. Madam Secretary, are there any other items?
Not for today.
Let me just say to members of the commission, as you know, we just had probably the most significant turnover in commissioners that we've had in a while. So I did give a lot of thought, because many of you had asked me about whether we should change the seating arrangement from the current alphabetical arrangement. And as someone whose last name begins with W and whose wife's last name begins with A, I can assure you that I am well acquainted with the challenges of coming later in the alphabet. But in view of the very long tradition, I decided, and not coming up with a system that made any better sense, I decided to leave it the way it is. But I also very much mindful of the fact that the commissioners to my left frequently feel that I favor the commissioners to my right and ask questions as we go around from right to left. So what I'm going to try to do is, when many hands go up, is calling you in order of seniority, so that those who have been here the longest get to ask their questions first, and those who have been here the shortest have time to think about what they're going to ask, and probably will end up looking a lot smarter. But if you think I'm being rude when your hand goes up, that's the method to my madness. At least that's what I'm going to try. So, barring, I just thought I owed you all an explanation, at least, as to how we were going to try to do this. So, with that, I will see you all tomorrow.